I am filled with the gratitude for the outpouring of support we've received from all across our great country. But the time has now come to suspend my campaign.
Former Governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, just moments ago announcing her exit from the Republican presidential race. American voters curious now if she's going to lend her support to former President Donald Trump. She had this to say on the matter.
It is now up to Donald Trump to earn the votes of those in our party and beyond it who did not support him. And I hope he does that.
Haley dropping out after losing every state but Vermont on Super Tuesday. Let's bring in Dionne. He is at Brookings Institution, senior fellow in governance studies and Washington Post columnist. It's great to have you here, Thanks so much for making the time to join us here this morning. So two big headlines out. Obviously, Nikki Haley dropping out of the race, setting up this a rematch between President Biden and former President Donald Trump. So Nikki Haley's exit from the race, what does that mean then for the 2024 election for November?
That means, good to be with you, by the way, that means the election starts right now. The campaign for the fall starts right now. We are going to have one of the longest campaigns that we've ever seen in our history. And I think what you've got is two nominees where there are a lot of Americans who don't like either of them. And they are the people who are going to decide the election. They're variously called double doubters or double haters. Now, that's not unusual in American elections, although I don't think you can compare any race with Donald Trump in it to any race in the past. But it's rare that you have elections where lots and lots of people love both candidates, maybe Barack Obama and John McCain in 2008. I think what you've seen over the last couple of weeks is people going into Biden's weaknesses a lot, above all, his age, his weaknesses among voters he needs, younger voters, Muslim and Arab voters, over his stand on the war on Gaza, a weakening of Latino support for Democrats. What's ironic about yesterday is Trump secured the nomination with a lot of big victories. But yesterday also showed some real Donald Trump weaknesses that the vote for Haley really described. And she's right that he has to win a lot of those people back. The core weakness is among really a lot of the kinds of people who watch this show. You'll probably have a lot of campaign ads on this show because it's college-educated voters overlapping with suburban voters, and particularly within that group, women voters. If you look at the various counties in these races, I'll just pick three. Fairfax County, near me, where I'm sitting in Virginia, Haley actually got 57% in Fairfax County. Very typical suburban county, but let's say that's too inflected by Washington-style Democrats. Hennepin County in Minnesota, where Minneapolis is, 45% for Haley. Mecklenburg County, where Charlotte is in North Carolina, 45% for Haley. That's a real problem for Trump. And I was thinking this morning of this primary by Haley as akin to the primary that Ted Kennedy ran against Jimmy Carter in 1980, or that Pat Buchanan ran against President George H.W. Bush in 1992. They both lost, but they both showed fundamental weaknesses in the incumbent. So they both have a lot to overcome. But I think this Haley's performance is going to get a lot of people focused on the problems Trump has and the question of what he can do about them.
Does that mean that Trump might need Haley at some point on the ticket?
Trump doesn't really like to pick people who have ever said a bad word about him. And Haley has said a lot of negative things about Trump. I'm sure you're going to see a lot of Haley's comments in Joe Biden ads this year. So it would probably be a good move, but I'd be extremely surprised if he made it. But I quit my membership in the Prognosticators Union after Trump won in 2016. So who knows? But I don't think so.
There has been a number of polls out, a number of opinion polls discussing the economy and the handling of the economy right now. Many voters are not satisfied with the job that President Biden has done so far, and many actually think that Trump did a better job during his presidency with the economy. In terms of changing that narrative for the Biden administration, how tough is that going to be, and what do they need to do in order to change the narrative and get the message across to voters?
I think their biggest ally on this is time. That you are already, it's very hard to shake perceptions that people have on things like this. But what you are seeing now, as inflation has finally ebbed, there's still concern about prices in the supermarket and the like. But you've had a turnaround in consumer confidence, as you've reported on, that's really important. And you've started to see an uptick in people's approval of Biden's handling of the economy. I think in the State of the Union tomorrow, you're going to hear Biden talk about that. But I think that if the economy stays steady, which means inflation flat or maybe even going down a bit more, the stock market staying reasonably healthy and the job market continuing to roar, I think that the Biden people will have a better time making the case they need to make in June and in October, most importantly, than they do now. But at this moment, attitudes toward the economy are so linked to our partisanship. You're never going to persuade most Republicans that the economy is going gangbusters. But there is some movement even among them in response to better economic news.
EJ, just lastly, while we have you, you mentioned State of the Union, what Biden needs to say during the State of the Union around the economy. What would you most notably be listening for? What are business executives perhaps going to be listening for, especially as we've gotten fresh news that Elon Musk perhaps not going to be donating money to either party?
Right, although he seems to be having a meeting with Donald Trump over some money issues. We'll see. I think Biden has an interesting line to walk because there's a real class paradox in American politics. Democrats are always the party of the working class, going back to FDR. Now, working class voters, particularly white working class voters, are Republican. So on the one hand, you're going to hear a lot of Biden appealing, Scranton Joe, as he likes to think of himself, appealing to working class voters, pointing out things like the fact that wages, income has gone up higher at the lower levels of the economy than at the higher levels, which is really unusual. But the other side of this, as I said earlier, is Biden needs a lot of affluent people in the suburbs, including some of those business folks you talked about, to vote for him. And I think he's going to stress the stability of the economy. I don't think he's going to make huge concessions on taxes. He'll probably call for increasing taxes on the very wealthy. But I think he's going to make an argument that he has run a very stable government and that the choice is between chaos, which he'll ascribe to Trump, and stability, which he will claim for himself. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how leading business figures react to that. I think you will get a share of them coming out for Biden on the grounds of stability, but there will still be a lot of tug for others because they want the deregulation and low taxes that Trump will keep talking about. But I think Biden has a shot with business people in this election that he might not have in others.
All right. As you said, EJ, the election begins now. EJ Dionne Jr., who is the Brookings Institution Senior Fellow in Governance Studies and Washington Post columnist, thanks so much for taking the time.
Great to be with you always. Thanks.